Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister. Public business. Private members' business. Motions.
Member for Caroni Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas the World Economic Outlook, published by the International Monetary Fund, projected that the Trinidad and Tobago economy is stagnant, and whereas this is at variance with the assertions of the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, and other government spokesmen on the subjects of growth and economic performance over the past 2 years, and whereas the economic experience of the majority of citizens is one of distress and concern, the psychological state of workers is one of anxiety and fear, and many among the middle class are challenged to meet their mortgage payments. And whereas oil production is at its lowest level of production now in decades, and whereas the negotiation of natural gas prices with producing companies has created new problems for the National Gas Company and the downstream sector and may affect national policy choices in the immediate future. And whereas the local private sector is hesitant to invest in the local economy and small and medium businesses are struggling to stave off closure, and whereas the depletion of foreign reserves is occurring at a net rate of $1.6 billion annually, and whereas after 3.5 years in office, the government seems unable to manage the economy effectively, citizens of all dimensions are under stress and live with daily uncertainty, and the country as a whole seems rudderless and directionless, be it resolved that this House condemn the government for its recklessness and mismanagement of the finances and economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, the purpose of this motion, you want a second? The purpose of this motion is to condemn the government led by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley for its recklessness and for the mismanagement of the finances and the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Responsibility for the mismanagement of the finances and the economy of Trinidad and Tobago rests on the shoulders of the Minister of Finance, the representative for Diego Martin Northeast. The custodianship of the finances and care for the economic fortunes of Trinidad and Tobago have not, in my view, been prudent. There is also evidence of a fair amount of incompetence in the mismanagement of the alignment necessary between monetary policy, fiscal policy, and economic policy. This is evidenced by the most reliable numbers available, Madam Speaker, at this time, from credible sources which strongly contradict pronouncements and words from government sources, as well as the lived experiences of citizens in every walk of life. Madam Speaker, everything that the Minister of Finance has said in Parliament sought to promise a stabilization after the dramatic fall of oil prices in January 2015, and following that 3.5 years following the 3.5 years which have passed, we were supposed to be on the road to recovery, growth, and a more buoyant economy. Let's take the themes of his budget statements in this honorable House so far. In October 2015, the minister spoke about restoring confidence and building Rebuilding Trust. Let's do it together. That was the theme of his 2016 budget. Now, that would have been a very difficult budget for the minister, I want to concede. They had just come into office, and they would have had to formulate a budget in a situation in which things were financially tough because of the fall in oil prices. In that year, the growth rate was minus 6.5%, according to the IMF and the central bank review of the economy. So if we are to concede that 2016 would have been a transitioning year for them, and to make some allowances for that, we had the September 30th, 2016 budget, Shaping a Brighter Future, a blueprint for transformation and growth, and that would have been for this 2017 budget. And at that time, the IMF economic outlook indicated at the end of that period that we had a growth rate of minus 2.6, and the central bank gave us a growth rate of minus 1.9. I think it is fair to say that based on that budget, we did not see, in fact, the shaping of a brighter future, and we did not have a plan or a blueprint for transformation and growth. And in fact, we did not, in fact, see growth in that particular year. The next year, the position of the minister was to make the case for a paradigm shift, changing the paradigm, putting the economy on a sustainable path. I think it is fair to say that what we got was more of the same, and we have not seen the economy go on a sustainable path. We've seen a continuing dependence on the energy sector, more particularly the natural gas sector. We've seen very little diversification or growth in the existing sectors outside of energy. And basically, there was no paradigm shift, there was no attempt, or there was no result in putting the country on a sustainable path. A sustainable path would have meant that things would have been initiated which had the capability of renewing itself and which had the capacity of regenerating itself as we went forward. In October 13, the last budget that was presented in this House, which is the 2019 budget, the theme of the budget was turnaround. And I think despite many tries by the minister, besides many statements by him and others, we have not been able to feel any turnaround yet. In between, we had 3 mid-year reviews on the 8th of April 2016, the 10th of May 2017, the 10th of May 2018. But all we've had, in spite of the several budgets and the mid-year reviews, is in fact economic stagnation, an economy in the doldrums with citizens of all dimensions living under stress and uncertainty beyond the normal set of uncertainties that we have come to expect with contemporary life. Our country as a whole seems rudderless and directionless, and after 3.5 years of financial and economic mismanagement, and the available numbers make that clear in terms of where our country is now and where Trinidad and Tobago is headed. Madam Speaker, as I was preparing for this debate, I received the release yesterday of the central bank, in which it recorded a growth in 2018 of 1.9%. And the reason I say that I was surprised by the release and to some extent alarmed when I look at the numbers is because the numbers defy credibility. The central bank says that according to the CSO projections published in the 2018 review of the economy, real gross domestic product, or GDP, increased by 1.9% in 2018 on account of expansion of the energy sector, 2.4%, and flat growth in the non-energy.
There's a lot of crosstalk and conversation going on in the chamber, and I find it quite disturbing. I will remind all members of Standing Order 53. Minister of Finance, I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to speak in this debate. Member for Caroni Central.
Thank you very much. As I was saying, I found that the 1.9 figure from the central bank lacks credibility, defies credibility, and that this was based on their assessment of an expansion of the energy sector, 2.4%, and flat growth in the non-energy sector of 0.0%. Now, the 2018 review of the economy, Madam Speaker, would have covered the year 2017. I want to make that clear. The 2018 review of the economy would have covered the year 2017. Now, any pronouncement on 2018 would have been a mere projection. In this particular case, by the CSO, as recorded in the review of the economy, a projection of 1.9%. And in September 2018, Madam Speaker, that projection could not have been based on numbers beyond the period January 2018 to June 2018, the first 6 months of the year. To come here, therefore, in 2019 May, and say that the real GDP increased by 1.9% as a definitive statement is something of a stretch. And it explains why this Minister of Finance, who has, at least within the last year and a half, succeeded in damaging his credibility over the numbers, and is now seeking, in my view, by this particular instance in which the central bank committed itself in this way to damage the credibility of the central bank or any other institution simply because he wants to achieve certain political objectives, I think.
And member for Muruga Tableland, please exercise some restraint. Member for Caroni Central, I'll ask you to withdraw that. It's imputing improper motives, and withdraw it. You could restate whatever you wish in a more acceptable way, and we can move on.
Okay, I withdraw, Madam Speaker, but I was making the point that when you use numbers like that to stretch the credibility of the reality that you have before you, because I will show what the numbers are in the central bank report itself, then it really undermines the integrity of the system here for data and for information. I want to say that I am very disappointed in the governor of the central bank. Because the governor of the central bank is meant to be an independent person.
Sorry, ma'am.
Member for Caroni Central. Again, I'll ask you to withdraw that. I would not allow that. Making certain statements against somebody that is not here to, who's not here to defend himself. But I am sure, as an experienced politician, a teacher, a debater, and so, you can find what you need to say in a more acceptable way. So please withdraw, and you can press on.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I would say that I expect the central bank to be an independent institution. And because of that, I'm very disappointed in this report by the central bank. Now, I have the numbers here for the various institutions, and they cover the year 2015 to 2020, in other words, up to the projections of 2020. I have the numbers for the review of the economy, and that is taken from page 1 of the review of the economy. I have the numbers from the IMF Article 4, 2018, and that is page 9 of the Article 4. I have the numbers from the World Bank Global Economic Report 2019, and that is from page 232. I have the Prime Minister's Mind Your Business speech, and this is taken from a transcribed version from page 6. I have the IMF World Economic Outlook 2019, and the numbers are taken from page 161. And I have the Central Bank Annual Economic Survey, which is taken from table A1. And when you look at the numbers for 2015, and you go across the board in all of those institutions that I mentioned, institutions and individuals that I mentioned, in 2015, you see 1.8, 1.7, 0.6, 1.9, 1.9, 1.8. Relatively close numbers for the same year in all of the institutions. 2016, minus 6.5, minus 6.1, minus 6.1, minus 6.5, minus 6.5, minus 6.5. Generally, 6.5 seems to be the number that everybody agrees upon. 2017, minus 1.9, minus 2.6, minus 2.6, minus 1.1, minus 2, minus 1.9 again. And in 2018, minus 1.9, 1, 1, 1.9, 0.3, and 1.9. And the numbers continue like that for 19 and 20. And the point that I'm making is that generally these institutions agree because they use the same data stock. They generally use the Central Statistical Office information, and they draw on other sources of information. In some cases, for the projections, they use models, and sometimes in the calculation of the various elements that contribute to GDP in any year, they also use certain models. So, Madam Speaker, there is no reason why there should be a fight or a quarrel about growth numbers in a country. But the situation in Trinidad and Tobago is compounded by the fact that the Minister of Finance, by his own admission, at a press conference when he said he received 2 emails from his permanent secretary or some member of his office in the Ministry of Finance, indicated that the original numbers, minus 1 for 2018 of the World Bank and 0.0 for 2019 of the World Bank, were now changed to 0.7 and 0.5 respectively. Now, that is why the surprise, in my view, growth numbers of the central bank, confirming a projection that could only have been made on the basis of the first 6 months of 2018, and based on the central bank report annual economic survey, there was no new data that was provided. It was difficult for me to see how they can confirm that 1.9 for 20, which was given in the year 2017, basically the 2017 numbers as a projection. So let me look at the annual economic survey, which is the central bank document, which came out yesterday, Madam Speaker. And when you look at it, you begin to see that I have had occasion to say in this Parliament, Madam Speaker, that when you read the central bank's report and you hear the minister's statements, it's almost like the central bank governor is walking on eggs to try not to get into a conflict with the Minister of Finance. And here it is.
Again, I'll ask you to rephrase that. There is a certain... Remember, there's a certain imputation in what you have said that I would not allow. So if you can retract that and you can rephrase and continue with your contribution.
Okay, Madam Speaker, I will retract and rephrase. In this document, although the central bank records the 1.9% for 2018, it says in the next paragraph, however, crude oil production, rig days, and depth drilled continued to decline. So it shows what is happening in the oil sector of the economy. It says that liquefied natural gas production was strong, and it gives the number 13.5%. And it says it's reflective of the recovery from the maintenance, etc. But in contrast, the production of natural gas liquids fell by 11.3%, as yields are being affected by the extraction of increasingly dry natural gas. Then he talks about the closure of Petrotrin and how that has affected the economy. And then he talks about the downstream to the natural gas sector. The output of urea fertilizer output was adversely affected by increased downtime at 2 ammonia plants, CNC and Tringen 2. Methanol output dipped because of maintenance activity at the M5000 facility in October 2018. Then he talks about the sales of cement declined by 2.7. He says this business services sector was held back by less buoyant activity in this commercial bank sub-industry. He says lower domestic demand affected activity in the manufacturing sector. He says manufacturers continued to operate with the lowest level, with considerable, spare capacity, producing at 66.4% of their capability over 2018, which was the lowest since 2014. The food and drink and tobacco subsector saw a particularly sharp fall-off, and then he goes on transport, communications, etc. So what the governor of the central bank is doing, what the central bank professionals are doing is, although it seems that they have been commandeered by the Minister of Finance to write 1.9.
Standing order 48.6, please.
And member for Caroni Central, I'll have to support the objection. I'll ask you to withdraw that, rephrase in a way that is acceptable, and you can continue.
Okay, Madam Speaker. So the central bank went along with the Minister of Finance in recording the 2017.
Just now. It's been withdrawn? Yes. Yeah, it's been withdrawn. Okay. Yeah.
To record the 1.9, but when you look at the numbers here, in addition to the narrative, you see energy sector 2.4, non-energy sector 0.0, agriculture, forestry, and fishing minus 15.6, trade and repairs minus 2, construction minus 3.3, financial and insurance activity 1.1, and so on. So I think that the central bank is trying to be authentic, trying to use the best numbers that it can that are authentic and real, but at the same time, they are hampered by the fact of the insistence that the numbers from the CSO recorded in the 2018 review of the economy are the numbers that have to be used. Madam Speaker, in the 12-month period, March 2018 to February 2019, Petrotrin's core production fell by 23%. This does not include any third-party production. In the 12-month period, March 28 to February 2019, Trinmar's production also fell by 24%. Reversing these trends require investment in drilling. And the question that arises, which I hope the Minister of Finance will answer, is where is Heritage Petroleum going to get the financing from to do this kind of drilling? We are dealing here with the lowest production numbers in terms of number of barrels for Petrotrin. We have seen the steepest decline in the petroleum sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Speaker, when you look at the Central Bank report of January 2019, which covers the same period, 2018, you also see here on page 14 a recording of all the declines that took place outside of the energy sector. So that the Central Bank is very careful to try to give the population the correct numbers. But somehow you find a situation which is anomalous, in which the gap between what the facts of all the details tell you and what the growth number is, there is one big dissonance about this number. Now, this is not the first time the Minister of Finance was quarreling about the growth numbers this time, but this is not the first time he's been doing it. You would remember, Madam Speaker, that he came here and talked about the maxing out of the overdraft by the People's Partnership in 2015. He was wrong at that time, as I will show. He quarreled with the Energy Minister and the energy technocrats over numbers submitted to a rating agency. Today, the Energy Ministry has stopped providing numbers, at least not to the general public. The minister also had a big quarrel with me in this House. When we had a debate, the last time we had an economic matter here, in which when I used the same January 2019 data covering 2018, he said that those were the wrong numbers and that the official numbers were the numbers from 2017 in the review of the economy. I already used the example of the changing of the World Bank numbers. I see there is a revision of outlook by the IMF here, but they were much more cautious. I said previously that it is unlikely that the IMF would change their mind. And this is what they said on the question about our forecasts and projections that were published in the April World Economic Outlook. They were based on information that was available as of early March, including data provided by the authorities and published information from official institutions in TT. And again, the team will update those estimates in the context of the July World Economic Outlook update using information available that should take us through to early June. So everyone who disagrees with the minister, he quarrels. I'm sure the minister probably told the central bank that they could only use the numbers from the review of the economy, because that is something that he claimed here that that had to be done. And we will see whether the IMF will revise their numbers and whether they will come back here for to do their economic report. As of now, the World Bank, the IMF numbers stand minus 0.6 and minus 1. And here minus 0.3 and 0.0. I simply want to close this part of my presentation, Madam Speaker, by quoting from page 133 of the statistical appendix of the World Bank Economic Outlook, in which they say Trinidad and Tobago's growth estimates for 2018, that is based on their 0.3 number and their 0.0 number for 2019. Trinidad and Tobago's growth estimates for 2018 are based on full year energy sector data from the Ministry of Energy and Ministry of Finance, preliminary national accounts data for the first 3 quarters of the year from the Central Statistical Office, and staff projections for the 4th quarter non-energy output based on available information. Growth estimates are subject to revision once the finalized data for the full year becomes available, and that is standard practice when you're dealing with statistical matters. Now, I have a speech here that was made to the day 1 year ago by the Minister of Finance. And he made it in this House on the 10th of May, 2018. And at that time he said, Madam Speaker, after a long and discouraging period of economic decline, we are now witnessing a welcome upturn. Early estimates are indicative of a growth forecast of 2.0% in 2018 and 2.2% in 2019, rising to 2.5% in 2020. And this is the problem with the numbers, Madam Speaker, which is that the minister projected certain things, and instead of coming to the Parliament, coming to the country, and said, look, we didn't meet what we projected, and here is why, let us explain what it is. He is prepared to manipulate the numbers in order to argue with those who provide the numbers.
Order 48.6, please.
Member for Caroni Central, I uphold the objection. Please withdraw and proceed.
I will withdraw. He is prepared to argue with everybody, no matter what is the level of their independence, in order to ensure.
Madam Speaker, that implies the same thing.
What's that?
And I raise Standing Order 48.6 again.
And I, again, Caroni Central, in the context of the point you're making, I have to uphold the objection.
Thank you very much. I withdraw, Madam Speaker, and I say the Minister of Finance in Trinidad and Tobago is right, and everybody else in the world is right.
Everybody else is wrong. Everybody wrong. Minister of Finance right. 48.6.
So, Madam Speaker, we have a challenge in oil production. We had an alleged corruption scandal over the fake oil issue, which in implications has to do with the fact that oil may have been counted that was not there and was paid for. Since then, we've heard that that matter is in arbitration. We've heard from the Prime Minister in this House that it was before the DPP. We have heard from the DPP in the public realm that it is not before him. But the end result is that we have a problem in the oil sector. In natural gas, we have a problem, Madam Speaker. The supply to, we have a problem. Is this it? Ma'am, can I ask you when my time will be complete?
The time is complete at 2:36:53.
That's my total time.
Your total time.
Okay. So I would say in the gas sector, we have a big problem, which is that the Prime Minister went to Houston based on his negotiations here, based on his report to the Parliament. He indicated that he had done some negotiations. the end result of that, Madam Speaker, is that we now have a situation where the price of natural gas from the producers to NGC is higher than it was. I don't want to say the number, I do not know it. That higher number makes it difficult for NGC to purchase at that price and to be able to honor the contracts downstream at the lower prices for which those contracts were written. So that NGC is in a bind. It is now taking only some of the gas from some of the producers, and it is running at a loss with some of the contractees in the downstream sector. And, of course, the others in the downstream sector who do not have contracts, where they had contracts to be renewed and have not yet been signed, those people are in a tizzy because they do not want to renegotiate contracts that would raise the cost of gas for them. So we have a problem in which the oil companies, the producers, the gas producing companies are satisfied. NGC is in a bind, the downstreamers are in a bind, and the future of the natural gas industry and what we do with it, we have reached a kind of crossroads. So the issue for us is really, we may have to decide the extent to which we continue to proceed downstream. There is another matter with that, which is that many of the downstream companies, based on the price differentials now, are going to become uncompetitive. And this is not me saying so, this is the Minister of Energy implying so in a statement that he made recently. And if you have that, it means that you have a danger with those industries continuing in Trinidad and Tobago. Because of the limits of my time, I will simply read some of the headlines of some of these. Energy Minister, downstream sector under pressure, Business Guardian 10/05/19. Non-energy sector needs help, Trinidad Guardian 10/05/19. NGC facing difficult financial times, energy reporter in the Trinidad Guardian. NGC buying less natural gas from BPDT and so. So the end result is that, remember, we are an energy dependent country. Nothing else is growing in the country. And the gas sector is the growing sector. And we have a challenge everywhere else in the economy. So the challenge may well be not whether we have had economic growth and what is the growth of the economy and whether we should quarrel about it. But the challenge may well be, Madam Speaker, what are the prospects for growing the economy going forward? Because if you have a problem with oil, you have a problem with natural gas, you have hard policy decisions to make about the future of natural gas and how it will be used in this country, and there is no growth in any other sector and no attempt at diversification or economic restructuring or transformation, I think that we are going to be in a problem. And the question may well be, where is the growth going to come from if we don't restructure, diversify, and transform the economy? And I want to say that not to the members opposite, who may know it and perhaps do not wish to address it at this point, but to the population. I want to say to the population that this is the dilemma, not whether it is 0.3 growth or whether it is 1.9 growth, or whether it is 2% growth. The issue may well be whether this economy has the wherewithal, given what is happening now with oil, given what is happening with natural gas, given what is not happening in the rest of the economy, whether this country has the wherewithal and the time, if we proceed as we're proceeding now, in order to have the capacity for growth and for sustainability going forward. Because what is the plan, Madam Speaker, for this government? What are the priorities? How is that related to the fiscal allocations that are given? How is it related to the development program in each year? This year we saw that all the money from the Infrastructure Development Fund, most of it anyway, went in fact to be paying for the closure of Petrotrin. What is the space in the country for private sector confidence and growth if the government is borrowing so heavily both internally and externally? What is the opportunity for diversification, for investment, for job creation, prosperity, and sustainability? So, Madam Speaker, I know that I have a very short time here, and I don't have the time to get into the numbers. I'm sure the minister will deal with that when he speaks on the Monday opportunity when he comes to account to this Parliament for the mid-year review. But the end result is that we have continuing deficits. True, it's getting smaller. We have growing debt. We have a problem with the exchange rate and the demand for foreign exchange and the impact it is having on business and ordinary citizens. And we have a situation, Madam Speaker, in which the country just cannot feel that they can be hopeful or confident about where the economy is going, where the country is going, and how secure they are in the economic system in Trinidad and Tobago. And none of the interventions of this government have worked. If I ask the question, there were agricultural incentives that were brought here and passed in the budget. What has been the impact on agricultural production in Trinidad and Tobago? There were incentives that were given and offered for housing. What has been the impact, Madam Speaker, on housing construction? There was an export allowance brought here for the Exim Bank facility. Here we see the report of the central bank put out yesterday, 66% capacity, and that they are going at that level because the economy outside of energy has contracted, so that they cannot, it doesn't make any sense. What about the tourism incentives that they offered? How many more tourists have come over the last year or the last 2 years? So the incentives, the interventions in the economy have not worked. And we have a challenging situation in this country. I will mention just a few of them because I have just a few minutes more. We have an aging population and a very low labor participation rate of just over 59% in this economy, in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a problem with job creation when it comes to this government and the extent of not just unemployment, but underemployment in the country. And the unemployment is causing extreme distress. Anybody who's a representative in a constituency knows by talking to their constituents how bad it is wherever you live in Trinidad and Tobago. There is a growing public debt and a persistence of fiscal deficits. The central bank said that productivity has improved a little, but we have a problem with labor productivity, and we have a deteriorating ease of doing business situation in Trinidad and Tobago, where confidence is almost shot. We have economic certainty and lack of clarity on the direction in which our economy is headed. We have this foreign exchange crunch, which is affecting everybody. If you want to get $200 in the bank, it's difficult. If you want to get $100,000, if you have a manufacturing enterprise, it's a problem. If you are a retailer or distributor and you want a $200,000, you can't get it. It's very difficult. And this is going to have an this is compounded now, Madam Speaker, by the changing demographics in the country because of the migration from everywhere. Venezuela is just one, but there is a migration climate emerging in Trinidad and Tobago, which, if not managed, is going to get us into trouble. We don't have any problem with migration, but we believe in managed migration. You must know who you're coming in,